Hey everyone, Mario again, coming at you with another video. As you can tell from up there, it is another episode of Theater Experience. Title is self-explanatory. I give my thoughts on films I see in the theater, usually ones that I already love and enjoy, or ones that I've been meaning to see and I see that there is a showing theatrically and I go, what the hell? Now, today's video is on a film that I saw a week ago in my second little excursion to the New Beverly Cinema up in LA. It is Tarantino's classic from the 90s, Pulp Fiction. Now, even though I still have a couple of his films to watch, I can honestly say Tarantino is one of those directors that would easily make my top 10 list, and is one of the few who would make that list who I can honestly say has never made a bad movie. Of the ones I've seen, I wouldn't say any of them are bad, and just from what little I've seen of Inglourious Bastards, I wouldn't list it as bad. But I can definitely see if he's not everyone's cup of tea, but me, I love him. I love his films. I go back and forth on which one is my favorite, but usually Pulp Fiction is the one that is my favorite overall. And finally being able to see it on the big screen in 35mm print helped that even further. Now, seeing all this beautiful cinematography up on that screen, it made me appreciate it even more. And of course, for those of you who have seen the film, or even just know about certain scenes, you could imagine the inner fan of me was smiling wide at certain scenes. The strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger speech, for instance. And of course, I and the entire audience did get a kick out of that scene of Travolta, which has become a meme of him turning. I got a pretty good laugh. If there's any moment that I'm surprised didn't get a little bit bigger laugh, was Tarantino's moment where he asks our two protagonists if there was a sign out on the front of his lawn. Because that's one of my favorite little moments in the film, mainly in retrospect a little bit, because I don't think a scene like that would fly in a movie nowadays, mainly because people would start getting triggered by it, even though in the context of the film it makes sense. And say what you want about Tarantino as an actor compared to how he is as a director, what range he does have works for this type of character. I'm not going to get into more than that, because if I ever do a more talks, I'll delve into it more, but it's just that scene I was surprised did not get a slightly bigger laugh, because it's just one of my favorite little moments in the film. Because guy's just minding his own business, one of his friends just says, hey, can we drop by? Yeah, sure. He finds, oh, you got a dead body in the car. Oh, fuck. I just like the dialogue. If Bonnie shows up, I'm going to get divorced. No marriage counseling, no trial separation. I'm going to get fucking divorced. And I don't want to get fucking divorced. That right there just sums up why that whole scene works, in my opinion. When I usually watch the film, I will admit I do usually skip over the dance scene, so this is the first time I watched it in its entirety, and I can appreciate it a little bit more now. Of course, seeing the cinematography on the streets of LA, having driven through LA since I first watched this film, one thing I did notice is you could really tell that they were filming a movie with this, because no time when I have driven through LA has it been as quiet as it was on the streets during this film. Now at night, depending on where you are, maybe it looked like one of the bigger boulevards during the scene where Travolta's character is driving to the drug dealer's house to get the adrenaline. But there's at least maybe one or two, but I guess you could say it's maybe that one magic hour on the one magic day. And I guess for the daytime ones, you could say it's probably a neighborhood with a traffic light at that moment, but it's just like, that's one thing I noticed. It's just like one of my little complaints about the first Thor movie I kind of put it a little bit more to the side when I actually drove through New Mexico and seen, it actually is this barren out here. Not really a lot of big cities that you could really get the impact that I mentioned in the last review I did of the film. So I guess that one's kind of doused a little bit. Here's just one of the things I noticed. And of course, seeing how Tarantino used a lot of the old things like the rear projection. You really notice it more on the big screen, but it has a charm to it that I really do like. It's like when you watch a lot of the old Hitchcock films and other films from that era. The rear projection's obvious, but it has its charm. And another real thing that I really love about Tarantino's films, especially this one, is the long take. That's more probably an editing thing than a cinematography thing, but it's a little bit of both. But I really miss long takes in films, especially if they are used with purpose, like the long take in The Hallway is here. It's used with purpose, and seeing it on the big screen, I admire that even more. The acting and the writing, of course, I don't have to go into depth. If anyone who's seen this film, they know about the acting and the story. It's a non-linear style that it could confuse you if you're not paying attention to the film or if you're not picking up on stuff, but it should be a film that once you've watched it once, you kind of get where the film is going for, and if you watch it again, you start to pick up on little things. And definitely a film, like I mentioned before, will be interesting to try to do as a little editing exercise to edit it as a linear film, although it might kill some of the enjoyment of it. And of course, there's a lot of other scenes that the audience reacted to well. If you've seen the film, you could probably guess which one it is, especially since I was seeing it with a group of fellow fans. If there was anything that kind of killed the experience, it was one of the guys I was talking to outside. I'm not going to go into it a lot, but let's just say this guy, he came off to me as a subtle film snob. What I mean by that is just his mannerisms and all that. You can tell he's judging you. The topic of our discussion was about film and all bunch of other stuff. It eventually led to the DCU because he asked if I'd seen any films lately and told him up at that point it was Justice League. And the guy basically comes across as one of those people that thinks that every film has to have depth to it in order to be enjoyable. And as I told him, if it's a film that is enjoyable / fun and it has depth, bonus. I didn't mention this in the conversation, but probably might have made him seem like less of a dick. RoboCop and Total Recall. Fun films have depth. But if a film is fun but doesn't have depth, does that automatically mean that the film was not a film? I'm not going to get into all of it, but that was his whole argument, that it wasn't a film just because it doesn't have depth. That is, to me, just a poor man's argument. I mean, I didn't want to get into a little rant about that, but to me, that is a poor man's argument. That the film has to have depth in order to be a film. Like I said, it helps, but films are meant to be entertainment, and some films are as. Like, if you can find depth in it, whether it was intentional or not, that's your prerogative, but sometimes, some other people might question it if it wasn't intentional. Like, makes me think of one of the articles I had to read for my film class about Rocky Horror Picture Show. Just reading the stuff that they were talking about Rocky Horror, I was going over it and I was thinking, did this guy watch the same movie I was watching? Because I did not see any of this shit in that movie. Or I did not see how you can interpret this in that movie. And also didn't help the matters that the article was written in an overblown manner to the point where I was like, oh God, please rip my eyes out. I know I got a little off topic, but I just had to throw that in there. But this film has some depth to it, but like I said, that's more for a topic of a more talks where I actually have time to sit down and write this out. But overall, it was a very fun theater experience. If you ever have the opportunity to see Pulp Fiction on the big screen, take it. I had an opportunity early last year to see it, that I could have seen it in a closer theater, but I blew it. I was lazy. As to paraphrase one of my friends, you had your chance and you blew it! So I had to drive further, but it was fun, especially since it's at New Beverly, which is owned by Tarantino. I have a feeling this was probably Tarantino's personal print of the film, which that just adds a little bit of a charm to seeing it there. And just as an added thing, if you're in Southern California and you ever have an opportunity to see a film at New Beverly, I'd say go. With me, the reason I don't go too often is not just because of the drive, but because most of the time the films I want to see are either I don't want to risk the traffic because of what day it is, and because of work. Which is why I'm glad I found another closer one at the Frida Cinema. It's in Orange County, so it's closer than LA. And let's just say that there is a film connection between the one I'm planning on seeing there and this movie. I'm not going to say exactly what it is, but let's just say it involves one of the pivotal moments in this scene, in this movie.